So in this video, I'm going to talk about doing some research to find the best keywords and categories for your book. So what I usually do is I just start off with a text document. I don't do anything fancy. And you can start off with just brainstorming whatever keywords come to mind that might work for your book. So for example, my mermaid book, I have young adult fantasy, mermaids, mythology, magic, Ireland, books for teens, and paranormal romance. You want to make a big list of maybe 20 or 30 of these, like how you would define or classify or explain your book when someone asks what's your book about, what kind of book is it, you should have, a few phrases in mind for what your book is actually about or what category it fits into. But then you want to find out which of these is the most heavily searched for. So which keywords people are actually searching for, and then hopefully find some alternatives. You can use Google AdWords. If you have a Google AdWords account, they have a keyword planning tool, so you could type some of these in and it will give you other suggestions. But I was trying to find a tool where you don't have to have any special account, so I found on Neil Patel's site. He's a guy who does a lot of blogging and online business stuff. He has a SEO analyzer. If you search for like free keyword research tools, you'll find some tools like this, and basically you can just put in the keywords and hit suggest, and it will tell you how many people are searching for those specific keywords. So I can see, basically how many people. I think this is per day. I didn't check before. Oops. But you can see that, for example, fantasy romantic has a lot more searches, or fantasy romance books has a lot more. So I could just copy this and I would add it to my suggested keyword tool. It looks like that, fantasy romance book. If this one's top 10 dark fantasy books, that would make a great blog post. A lot of these may not be things that people actually look in on Amazon, but they are things that people are Googling. So if people are Googling top 10 dark fantasy books, that's great. I want to have a blog post that has that title, or good fantasy romance books for adults. That's another great title that I would use in a blog post. So I could just add those in. I'd grab a few of these. So these are keywords that I would want to be using. I couldn't really use these in my Amazon description, but I could be using them for blog content. And this is just to kind of get an idea to get started. But then I could also check for, instead of dark fantasy romance, maybe I'll try paranormal romance. And we're just getting ideas of what people are actually searching for, so what might make good keywords for me to focus on or target. So for paranormal romance, series are really popular, which is kind of interesting to know. So I should have a blog post about best paranormal romance book series, because a lot of people are searching for that. A lot of people are searching for paranormal romance book, supernatural romance book. That's interesting. I didn't realize that supernatural romance was even a keyword people are searching for. I thought everyone used paranormal romance. So that's great, because now that's a new keyword I could use, a keyword phrase, or supernatural romance. That's something I would add in my Amazon description, because I could describe my book as a supernatural romance or a paranormal romance and see which one gets the most traction. This one is new paranormal romance books, so some people are searching for new. Supernatural romance novels for adults, that's a long one, but not very many searches. They're called long-term keywords. What that means, or long-tail keywords, the longer and more specific the keyword phrase that you use, even though there's less people searching for it, it's easier to get ranked for it. So if I write a blog post called the best supernatural romance novels for adults, anybody searching with this specific keyword phrase would find my blog post, because probably most people aren't using those exact other keywords. Paranormal romance books is really popular. New paranormal romance books, I'm going to copy that one down. So this is just using this one keyword tool. I could also try mermaid books and see what that shows up. That'll take a second. Old mermaid books, book mermaid. mermaid book series. Mermaid books is really popular. Books about mermaids. I don't know if mine would qualify because it's fiction and this seems like it's more nonfiction. Anyway, this is kind of just doing research. This is very general though. This is kind of like what people are searching for on Google. That's important because you want to have content that shows up on Google also. You don't just want to focus on Amazon. You want to be writing content on your blog to catch the readers who are searching for these keywords. And then when they find your content in your blog, then they can find the link to your book at the bottom of your page. I'm going to go straight to Google and try to do the same thing. When you're in Google, you'll usually see stuff like this. When you type in keywords, it will start to autofill some things. So if I type in paranormal romance, it'll show me paranormal romance book series. It doesn't show me exactly how many people are searching for these, but these could all be pretty good keywords. So I don't get as much data, but this is kind of a good way to start. I could just do it this way, or I could do supernatural thriller, novels, genre, definition, meaning. I usually use best books for, and you'll get some of those. Maybe best mermaid books for adults or whatever. This is something you can do just in Google. You also want to search for example, best mermaid books for teens. I know that's a long-term keyword I use a lot for one of my books. If I Google that, I will see who's talked about that. Almost always on when you search books for Google, you'll find Goodreads. The first few categories will be Goodreads. And so these are usually lists. So these are Goodreads genres or lists. And that's important to know because you want your book to show up on those lists on Goodreads. So you want to be searching for your keywords, and then you can find this genre that's all about mermaids. Here's my book actually that shows up right away in this category for mermaids, which is pretty great because anytime anybody's Googling best mermaid books for teens, they're probably going to find one of these Goodreads posts right away, and they're going to click on it, and you want your book to be there. So you want to know enough about Goodreads to add your books and to make sure that they're showing up in the right lists. That's really important. Popular mermaid books. It would be great if mine just showed up, right at the top of here. They're not. But that's something like if you learn a little bit more about using Goodreads, you can make sure your books show up. I'm kind of curious now how far down mine is, or if mine is even on this list. But later I can come back and see whatever this list is, popular mermaid books, and see how I can add my book to this list. That's something you want to be aware of. Like whatever shows up first in Google, you want to get your book there because that's going to be another opportunity for you to have some visibility for your book. I'm going to go back. So Goodreads always shows up pretty quickly. But if I scroll down, this one's actually my site, Mermaid Books Urban Epics, because I've written a lot of stuff about best mermaid books for teens on my site. So now when people Google those keywords, my page will show up in the first page of Google, which is great. But here's some other ones. This is Geek Wrapped. This is Reading in a Single Sitting, best books about mermaids. So I would want to click on these other blogs, and I would want to see if I could get them to add my mermaid book to their list. And that's something you can do just by contacting the author and saying, hey, I noticed, this site, I think it's great. I love this blog post. Could you please add my book to this list? I'd be happy to send you a free copy. That would really be something that's worthwhile. Because if it costs me one paperback book, and if I can send them one book and get them to add me to that list, if I could do that for all of the books that show, all of the articles that show up on the first page of Google, that would be a lot of great free visibility for me. So that's something you want to do when you're doing keyword research. You want to find out what's actually showing up in Google and how you could get your books to start showing up there. I'm going to go over to Amazon now because a lot of this stuff you can just do on Amazon actually. So you'll be doing kind of the same thing. I could say mermaid books for teens for Kindle. They auto-populate a few things, and so you can look at that. These are kind of like some of the things are what you've searched for before, and some will be what other people have searched for. And so when you search for mermaid books, you want to see what books are showing up, and you want to make a note of all of those books. It's kind of the same thing. If you went back to Goodreads, there was those lists of the most popular, the most common books in your category. You want to know what all of those are, because those are kind of your competition. So you want your book to show up wherever those other books show up. So like, for example, this one's really popular, but this one's really not suited for my audience because this is more for young teens. Whereas this one, Deep Blue by Jennifer Donnelly, is a little bit more my target audience. So this is one that's it's sort of my competitor, but not exactly, because readers read more than one book. They're not going to read just one mermaid book. If they like mermaid books, they're going to read 10 or 20 mermaid books. So you want to show up and be part of the other books that are similar to your books. So, for example, I would click on any book that looks similar to mine, and I could see where they show up. So I can see what categories they're in and make a note of that. I could see what other people are saying in their book reviews, and then I'll look at customers who bought this item also bought, and I'll look at all these other mermaid books in the also boughts. This is The Siren by Kira Cass. That's a newer mermaid book that's a bestseller. So I definitely want that one to be in my list. So I would just keep going back to my notepad, and I'd be making a list of Kira Cass, The Siren. And you want to make a list of, I would say, at least 20 books and authors that are similar to yours, because you're going to be using those keywords and those authors when you start targeting on Facebook or with Amazon ads. You're going to be trying to show your ads or showing your book to people who like those authors or those books, or who have bought those books before. So like, I really want my book to show up in this customers who also bought section. So I'll be like, for example, when I build an email list of readers who like mermaid fiction, I'll be recommending these other books to them in the hopes that my book will show up in the also bots for those books. So those are some ways to do research. I'm going to show you one more tool, which is Katie Rocket. This is a paid tool that I actually use a lot because it's a little easier. I think it costs, I don't know, I think it's under $100, but that's something you can look into if you want. What I'll do is type in a new idea search, and I can just search for mermaids, and it's going to show me the search traffic for Google and for Amazon. So people search for mermaid book 320 times on Google and under 100 times on Amazon. It says, which actually isn't a hugely competitive keyword, which is why my mermaid book really isn't selling as well as I would like. So maybe I'll try a different one. And for example, maybe now I'll try to write a vampire book. And I'll see that a lot more people are searching for vampire books. But then I can also look at some suggestions. So this tool gives me a lot of other suggestions that I could be targeting. So for example, Interview with a Vampire, Young Adult Vampire, Vampire Book Club. There's a whole bunch of other possible things, and it starts to recommend specific books. So Shade of Vampire is a series that's selling really well on Amazon. That would be one of my keywords. So I'd want to go and put Shade of Vampire by Bella Forrest. And I would go look that one up. This is kind of, I mean, it's a long process. You really need to spend a lot of time going through Amazon and seeing what's selling in your target categories. We'll talk more about specific categories later. Like in these categories, you want to choose the categories where your book fits in, but you also want to choose categories where you have a better chance of getting into the top 20. So we'll talk more about that, I think, later during the publishing. This is kind of just the initial research stage, but I would want to click on these categories and look through the top 100 paid books and also the top 100 free books. And you also want to keep in mind the books that are here right now, like on Amazon, things are changing a lot of the time. So you don't just want to do this once. You want to do this like every 2 weeks for a month or two, because these top sellers will be changing all the time, and you really want to focus on the books that are sticking, the books that stick here long term. That's kind of nice. So in the top 100 paid under teen, young adult, witches and witches fantasy books, my book Shearwater is actually doing pretty well there right now, which is surprising because my rank isn't that good. It's like 8,000, which isn't super. It's great if you can stay in the top 10,000 long term, but I would like to be doing better. So like my Scarlet Thread one right now, I'm actually doing a free campaign. I just got a BookBub. So right now I'm number 7 in the free Kindle store, which means like if you go to teen and young adult top 100 free, then I show up right away. But this isn't long term. Generally this book sticks around 1,000 or 1,200. So I do stick at number 1 in several categories, but that they're not necessarily the categories I want to be known for. Anyway, like I said, this is kind of a long process. You can spend a couple hours making a list of keywords. You really want to get to like 100 keywords and categories and authors and book titles. And you just want to you can make a spreadsheet or just put them in a text document. And we're going to be using those later on. So now I want you to just take some time and start doing this kind of research, looking around and trying to find some keywords that you can use to position your book.